Hello, BookTube. I have a sleeting rain, freezing cold, pitch dark Friday reads for you here in benighted Boston. Don't come here. Don't visit. Don't make plans. It's just awful. It's just awful, and no end in sight. No predicted end in sight. Just winter from now on. Even though it's the third day in May, but nevertheless, it's still Friday. Somewhere, it's still Friday. And I've got books I want to show you here. I've got 6 of them, and in this particular case, I haven't read any of them. So we're going to be exploring them together. I don't know that we've seen any of these on this channel, but they might be of interest to you, maybe more interest to you than they are to me. So we'll start off with a tiny one. This is going to take no time at all to do, less than half an hour. It's from MIT Press, and it is a tiny little thing. It's going to be totally lost in your bookstore. It's this. Smaller than a mass market paperback. It's by Christiane Noslane-Volhard, translated, as one would assume, by Jonathan Howard, and illustrated by Susie Grutzmacher. And it's called Animal Beauty, on the Evolution of Biological Aesthetics. Just a tiny little thing. The title would make you think it's 500 pages long, but no. Are animals able to appreciate what humans refer to as beauty? No, they aren't. I know it's a rhetorical question, but no, they're not. They're able to appreciate what animals consider beauty. Not what humans consider beauty, but anyway. The term scarcely ever appears nowadays in scientific descriptions of living things, as well it could not. How are you supposed to determine what an animal perceives? Not what they sense. You can, if you hook enough wires to a totally involuntary and tortured test subject, you can get a very good sense of what their senses are telling them about the outside world. But you can't know what they perceive. But anyway, I'm not going to argue with this whole thing the whole way here. But we humans may nonetheless find the colors, patterns, and songs of animals to be beautiful in apparently the same way that we see beauty in works of art. In Animal Beauty, Nobel Prize-winning biologist Christiane Noslane-Volhard describes how the colors and patterns displayed by animals arise, what they communicate, and how they function in the social life of animals. And the thing is accompanied by watercolor drawings. So I'm totally on board. We'll see what it can tell me. It's tiny. In fact, in the time that I have been making this video and talking about this book, I have also finished reading it. We'll move on to fiction. We'll move on to a novel from the folks at Liverite, a great publishing imprint of W.W. Norton. This is Southern fiction. I have a notoriously short wick when it comes to Southern fiction, but I'll give it a try anyway. It's by Mary Miller, and it's called Biloxi. That is the cover. Dog looking up from a kitchen parquet floor. Let's see here. Biloxi gives male midlife crisis a droll new dimension. It displays yet again, in Joyce Carol Oates' approximation of Miller's previous work, Always Happy Hour, her sociologist's eye for the mundane and the revealing. No offense meant to JCO, but I have almost never known someone to say that about a writer when it didn't, and in the end turn out to be that the author only had an eye for the mundane and never for the revealing. But I don't think I've ever read any Mary Miller, so this could be the exception that proves the rule. Miller's depictions of women, pinned at times by the male gaze, are raw and real and relatable. With Biloxi, she flips that gaze, inhabiting the aloof eyes of 63-year-old Lewis McDonald of Biloxi, Mississippi. A sort of fast food-loving Gulf Coast varietal of Warren Schmidt, the protagonist in Alexander Payne's film About Schmidt. Lewis McDonald Jr. takes a dramatic and literal left turn one day in the act of avoiding his wife at the local Walgreens. That detour will lead him to meet Lila, an overweight mixed-breed dog up for adoption. It isn't love at first sight, but before he realizes it, he is sort of in love. A strange kind of love that you don't want to admit to, but that sits in the corners of your mouth. The kind of love that inspires you to burst out singing strange, improvised jingles and that lets your toes be licked on the recliner. The kind of love that changes your routine and that has you generally weighing whether it's worth the commitment. Abandoned by his wife and electing to retire early in the hopes of an inheritance, Lewis watches television with a fondness for Naked and Afraid and waits for his daughter to call or his neighbor Frank to drop off leftovers from Chili's. With Lila, he finally confronts his loneliness and masculinity and the limitations of each. Okay, that sounds like it could be really good. This comes out at the end of May. I wonder. Let's do a quick since it's pouring rain and miserable outside. Let's go to page 112. That is the random page chosen by BookTube as a place to sample a book. Let's see a little bit of page 112. He's home early, she said, ushering me out the back door, and I made a run for it just as Harry Davidson was coming in the front. It was like a song on the radio. I heard his voice, no doubt asking who was parked in front of his house, no doubt recognizing my car as he saw that Lila was back. At the gate, I encountered a bike lock and felt sure I was done for, that the jig was up, but I pushed it and clattered open. As I was putting the car into drive, he came bounding down the driveway at me full speed, which was not very fast, his whole body in motion. It was really something to see. Knowing I had a few moments to spare, I watched him with my foot hovering over the gas. It was grotesque and beautiful. I wanted to punch him in the face, knock him straight out. I felt the bones in his face crack at the strength of my wrist, the referee calling the match. What a mistake it had been to come, and yet it only felt like part of a story, and the story wasn't finished. I knew I'd done something good, something beyond my knowledge and capabilities, and I felt certain that Lila would come back to me, and Sasha too. Then, when it was nearly too late, when I'd nearly been caught, I mashed my foot to the gash and left the scene, which is how I thought of it, as if a crime had taken place. Okay, all right. I felt sure that I was done for, that the jig was up, that, done for is already a cliche, so you don't want to add to it with the jig was up. You're not making your character endearing by doing that. You're just being lazy. And also, I like the energy of the prose very much, but as is the case in so many of the made-up stories, it describes something that would never happen. It would never happen. Leaving aside the magical bike lock that somehow isn't locked, why would it be there if it weren't? Leaving that aside, if you are fleeing from the scene of a crime, from the scene of a horrible social awkwardness or even potential violence, you don't wait. No matter how slow the person is getting down the drive to attack you, you don't wait. You drive off. You just drive off. The waiting here is not done because the character would ever do that. It's done because the author wants to describe the scene. And, well, anyway, I like the energy of the prose, so we will see. That is, I think, one of the, oh, goodness gracious, no. This is split. It turns out, completely accidentally, this Friday Reads is split fiction and nonfiction. So that is not the only novel. We will get to other novels. The next one, though, is something I expect to like a lot more. I don't know. I could end up liking Biloxi quite a bit. I do like fiction, even though I don't give that impression on this channel. But this one is nonfiction, and it's nonfiction. It's a whole book on a subject that I've never read a whole book about. And it stars a cast of characters that I know as well as if I had just left them in the last room. This is by Dan Abrams and David Fisher, and it is called Theodore Roosevelt for the Defense, the Courtroom Battle to Save His Legacy. And this comes out soon. Oh, yeah, the third week in May. This author did another famous trial book, Lincoln's Last Trial, that I thought was bad. Just bad, not enough story to fill the book. But I know the story of this book, and there is enough here to fill a book. Let me tell you a little bit about it here. The libel case that was brought against Theodore Roosevelt by William Barnes, the former head of the Republican Party in New York State, while endorsing a nonpartisan gubernatorial candidate, Roosevelt, himself a Republican before helping launch the Progressive or Bull Moose Party, had railed against two-party boss rule as a rotten system that created, quote, an invisible government responsible for the maladministration and corruption in the public office. Barnes, the owner and publisher of the Albany Evening Journal, was a powerful party boss with dreams of running for governor himself. In an attempt to give his reputation to save his reputation from these false and malicious attacks, Barnes sued Roosevelt for libel, demanding the princely sum of $50,000. The civil trial held in Syracuse became a media circus. Newspapers everywhere sent reporters, just everywhere. Drawing on a trove of primary source material, including the complete typed transcripts from every moment of the case, as well as a rich and colorful contemporary reportage from the many newspaper journalists covering the proceedings, the authors create a novelistic narrative that captures the high-stakes tension, occasional humor, and precedent-setting testimony. The trial, which played out as America was on the brink of World War, would take its toll on both Roosevelt and Barnes. And I have read large chunks of those transcripts, and there is a good deal of humor. Roosevelt loved a crowd, and he knew himself and was a sure person. So every misstep by his opponents at trial, he was right there. It wasn't like he thought, 2 days later, oh my God, that was a misstep. How I wish I'd noticed. So this might redeem the last book. Might easily do that. It's certainly got more material to work with. So that's one of the nonfiction books and one of the ones I'm looking forward to. Then we'll do 2 novels in a row. They are very different novels, I suspect. They are very different novels. One of them I don't know the author at all. The other one I know the author and I know what to expect. The first one that we'll deal with is this is a known author. This is a feel-good summer book author. This is if you have not made her acquaintance, you should, because these are wonderful to read. This is the latest book by Dorothea, Benton, Frank, and it is Queen Bee. And this comes out in late May. It's a low country tale set on the author's beloved Sullivan's Island. Meet Holly McNee Kenson, a beekeeper who spends much of her time tending to her hives and cooking for and waiting on her demanding hypochondriac of a mother, who she refers to as the Queen Bee. Next door to Holly is Archie, a recent widower with 2 young sons that Holly adores as though they were her own. Despite a new job icing cakes part-time at the local Safeway, things are pretty uneventful in Holly's world until they're not. That is the case with all of this author's books. Things are uneventful until they're not. The Queen Bee falls ill, and in sweeps Leslie, Holly's older married sister, to save the day. Leslie is dealing with some drama of her own after her husband Charlie reveals a secret pastime, so she needs a little space. The Archie's boys are becoming more and more attached to Holly, while Holly is getting more attached to their father. Just when Holly is ready to confess her feelings to Archie, boom, enter Sharon, a sassy, child-hating dentist who digs her claws into Archie with the force of 1,000 swarming bees. All right, whoever wrote this pub sheet is very much on the same wavelength as Dorothea, Benton, Frank. How wonderful. Meanwhile, Leslie and the Queen Bee head to Las Vegas to visit Charlie and meet a new cast of characters who end up changing their lives for the better. So that you can tell already. The pub sheet goes on, but you can tell already what you're getting here. You're getting a frothing, bubbling, feel-good gumbo of a story, and this sounds delightful even by this author's standards. But even so, I wouldn't miss a novel of hers. There's a small group of writers like this who just you don't miss their books. Once you fall in love with them, you don't miss their books. And then this next one, I'm not sure that love is what the author is going for in this next one. This comes out. The man has schmutz all over it, and that's a shame because the non-smutched cover is kind of nice. This is due in September. This is The Chestnut Man by Soren Sveistrup, Sveistrup. That is the cover. Again, like I said with the Susan Sontag biography cover, I would really like it if the publisher had the courage to make this the cover of the book. That's the spine. Just, but anyway, this seems to me that it is going to be a thriller. So let's see what we have here. It comes out in early September. Danish scriptwriter, show creator, and film producer Soren Sveistrup has earned international acclaim for his procedural dramas, including The Killing, which sold in over 100 countries and was remade into a hit series for AMC in the U.S. Okay, but does he write books? I mean, sorry if that's heretical for me to ask, but anyway, let's find out. Now Harper is pleased to announce the American arrival of Sveistrup's pulse-pounding crime novel debut. Oh, this is a debut. Okay. The story of 2 embattled Copenhagen detectives spurred on by an eerie calling card to bring a brutal, cunning psychopath to justice. I wonder if that's what this means. If you found one, he's already found you. It is without closure that Rosa Hartung, Copenhagen's Minister of Social Affairs, comes back to work 1 year after the murder of her 12-year-old daughter. A mentally ill young man has confessed to the killing, but is unable to remember key details of the crime and can offer no insight on the whereabouts of the dismembered body. Yeah, we're a little bit away from Queen Bee here. On the day of Hartung's return to Parliament, a single mother is found murdered in the Copenhagen suburbs. Detectives Nya Thulin and Mark Hess, new and reluctant partners, find a small human figurine made of chestnuts near the victim. Analysis reveals that one of the chestnuts bears the fingerprints of Minister Hartung's daughter, who has been presumed dead for nearly a year. It is not the last figurine that we will come across. Of course, no, there will be figurines plenty in this book because it is a novel. Each one battling the tumult of their personal lives, institutional roadblocks, and perhaps the most dauntingly, each other. Thulin and Hess's investigation quickly becomes a breakneck race to prevent this sadistic killer from striking again. Rich with a fascinating characterization and unpredictable plotting that has endured the author's work to viewers worldwide. Okay, but he's never written anything before. A novel is a different thing. We'll see. The Chestnut Man is unlike any debut you will read this year. Okay, all right. Okay. I'm not sure on what you are basing that. It sounds like a fairly by-the-numbers serial killer thriller. They could still be really good, but unlike anything else I'll read this year, I'm going to read it in 2019. I'm going to read at least 20 serial killer books. And I don't think any of them on paper are going to sound any different from this. Let's see. The evolution of the partnership of Nya Thulin, a single mother eager to leave the boring confines of homicide for the Copenhagen Cybercrime Investigation Unit. She prefers cybercrime to homicide. Interesting. And Mark Hess, a disgraced Europol investigator whose presence in Copenhagen is nothing short of a professional exile, is one of the most memorable and original in recent memory. Okay, all right, fine. Okay, great. If it's their relationship that is going to set this apart, that's totally legitimate, and I look forward to it. Great, fantastic. HarperCollins was pleased to have won the American rights to this book, which is already sold in 25 territories across the globe. Okay, fantastic. All right, so The Chestnut Man, this is... I'm not meaning to poo-poo his extensive CV. He is obviously an experienced storyteller. Let's put it that way, in other venues, in other media. So we'll see if that carries over to this one. I have a sweet tooth for absurd serial killer thrillers like this, chestnut statues. So I'm going to be reading this soon instead of waiting until September. And then this last one is not going to take long. It's more of a browse through, but it does seem fairly impressive. This is the movie-making magic of Marvel Studios' Heroes and Villains, a cinemagic book from the folks at Abrams. This is for young readers, they say. Look at this. This is cinemagic. I don't know that I know any of the other books in the cinemagic series, but I bet I know what it pertains to, because this is not just a history of Marvel heroes in the cinematic universe. It's also a history of their design, their visual design, and it's beautifully done itself. Like, for instance, here you have, let me see if we can get you to convey this. Here's Thor, and here are, in this foldout, are the various cover designs that were contemplated for the character before the one that we know from the movies was settled on. We have early designs of all kinds, and that applies even to villains. Like, for instance, we have the multiple designs of Loki in one of these things. In other words, every single page has pullouts, these foldouts. That is part of the design of this series of books, I guess. Here we have Captain America, all the different possibilities for Captain America. Fantastic, all this kind of original artwork. And you get villains as well. There are 2 or 3 pullouts for Thanos, it looks like, throughout here in his various evolution through the movies. I'm pretty sure that as a bad guy, Thanos is gone. But you never know. You never know. Once you introduce alternate realities and time travel, anything is possible. But this is a fairly elaborate love letter to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. One, I imagine, of many that will come out now that the first enormous phase of that cinematic universe is over. I imagine we'll see many books like this. But this one, I don't know that reading is the right word. I'm sure that I will learn a lot that I didn't know about the various ideas that have gone on behind the scenes in making these characters, heroes and villains. But really, it would be a visual feast that I will be really just absorbing the visuals of all this and wondering what it would be like if those alternate visions, had been the one that the studio went with. So I think it's going to be fascinating to do. So there you go. That is a cold, windy, dark, sleeting, freezing cold Friday reads. So we have Heroes and Villains of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not really a read, more of a feast your eyes type thing. Then we have The Chestnut Man, a thriller that I'm going to absorb now quickly, headlong, for the sheer delight of being a reader, and then later in the summer, when I get the finished copy, then I will bear down it as a critic. Then Queen Bee, I will not be reading this as a critic at all. There would be no point, and I would miss the fun. So I will be just enjoying myself. Then Theodore Roosevelt for the Defense. A fairly big crime, or a fairly big trial in Roosevelt's late life that is always mentioned and often gets a chapter in a Roosevelt biography, but as far as I know, has never had a book. Certainly I've never read a book on the subject, so can't wait. Then Biloxi, Southern fiction by Mary Miller, about a man and a dog. That could paper over a few of what might be its faults. And lastly, this little thing, which again, like the Marvel book, will take no time at all. This is Animal Beauty on the Evolution of Biological Aesthetics. But it's a tiny little thing, complete with original watercolors. So that is a Friday Reads. That's a Friday Reads that I don't think, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think that these will take me much longer than Friday. So that still leaves the weekend. We shall see. I intend to do a whole bunch of reading today, so starting as soon as I turn this video off. So I'm going to get to that, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.